Hey folks, how's it going? Cauliflower cheese. Boring, right? Wrong! When done right, it's the delicious little bow that will tie your whole Sunday lunch together. Playlist linked here. And luckily for us, doing it right means keeping it simple. Say goodbye to undercooked cauliflower, lumpy sauce, or just plain cheesy mush. It's time to up our cauli cheese game, people, so let's get into it. We've got a nice sized supermarket cauliflower today. Be careful when you're buying these, as the size can vary a lot, and often the leaves will obscure the actual size of the head, so do check it when you're buying. To get started, I'll just break off the bigger leaves where they meet the stem so I can see what I'm working with. And then I'll just go in with my knife, working around the main stem to begin to separate the florets. Other than the dry part at the bottom, there's nothing especially wrong with this stem. You could totally cut it into chunks and keep it in the dish or save it for soup, but there's plenty here with the florets, so I'll just get rid of it today. Those leaves we removed earlier are edible too, so do save those if you feel like experimenting. They're a great alternative pretty much anywhere you'd find spinach or kale, and they roast up nicely too, as does the head for that matter. Video for another day. Once that's done, I'll just roughly cut the florets down their stems until they're all of a similar size. You want them to retain their shape and some of their bite in the finished dish, so this size is perfect for today's recipe. That's the cauliflower sorted. Now for the other main ingredient, cheese sauce. While we're at the board, I'll measure out my roux ingredients. For this, I want about 40 grams or 2.5 tablespoons of butter and the same of plain flour. You can totally eyeball this if you're used to making roux, but if not, there's no shame in breaking out those scales. We'll need 500 ml of milk. I like whole, you do you, so I'll measure that out into a jug too. We're just making a basic mornay today, which starts with a bechamel, and a common move when doing that is to heat the milk and then let it infuse with an onion. You can do that if you want. I usually don't when making cauliflower cheese, but I won't deny it does help build a nice depth of flavour. If you've got an extra half an hour, then by all means go ahead and heat this milk gently until almost boiling, then peel and throw in an onion along with a bay leaf and some cloves if you like. So to get started on the bechamel, we need a roux. And for that, I'll just melt the butter in a pan over a medium heat until it starts to foam, and then turn down the heat and stir in the flour. I forgot to film the beginning of this part, I do apologise. I'll keep stirring for 2 minutes or so, making sure to pick up those bits that hide in the corner of the pan, just until the raw flour smell is gone. I've got the cauliflower over a high heat here too, starting with cold water and with the lid on. The timing should just about work out perfectly, so I'll just keep an eye on things while I make the sauce. I want to drain that cauliflower as soon as it reaches a solid boil. Once the roux is cooked, I'll turn off the heat and start gradually adding the milk. Now go gently here, add a little at a time and stir through with each addition. It'll get kind of thick and weird to begin with, but keep at it and it will soon start to smooth out. If you add the milk too quickly, it'll be really hard to get rid of any lumps. Going gradually makes it super easy to end up with a nice smooth sauce. While you stir, keep making sure to get the spoon into the corners of the pan, or roux will hide there and either burn or just make for a lumpy sauce. You could use a whisk for this if you liked, but I find a wooden spoon works well, so that's what I usually use. With all the milk mixed in, turn the heat back onto medium-low and give it a final stir to make sure everything's combined. Hey folks, future me here. You just caught me editing the video and I realised I forgot to say, if you're hating this video so far, maybe you hate cauliflower, maybe you hate cheese, maybe you hate me. Be sure to give that thumbs down button down below a real good smash. Alternatively, if you're not hating all of those things, maybe give it a thumbs up, and if you're feeling saucy, even a subscribe. Either way, it really helps the channel. Thanks for doing that. And that's just as the cauliflower comes to a boil. So as soon as it looks like it's going to boil over, I'll turn off the heat and moving over to the sink, I'll drain this into a colander and just leave it to steam for a few minutes while I finish the sauce. Back at the sauce, and the move here is just to keep stirring it almost constantly over that medium-low heat until it's thickened to a saucy consistency. Notice how it coats a metal spoon here? That's perfect. This only takes 3 or 4 minutes in total. I'll turn the heat off again and go in with a pinch of salt. Just cooking salt is good, not too much, we can adjust later. And I'll follow that with some mustard. English would be the usual go-to here, but I don't have any. Dijon works great too, so just a generous teaspoon of that. If you're wondering why the mustard, it's a nice extra flavour note that will help bring out the cheese flavour a bit. It helps bring a bit of colour to the sauce, and it's a natural emulsifier, so it will act as backup to the emulsifiers in the milk when we're melting a ton of cheese later. So I just lightly stir those in before I bring the main event, mature cheddar, and plenty of it, about 450 grams or 1 pound. Just grate this in with the box grater and then give everything a good stir with the heat off until the cheese is melted and your sauce is once again lump free. Of course, you can experiment here with alternative cheeses, but you'll definitely want something with some age and bite to it, IMHO. Give it a taste to make sure you're happy. It should be slightly too salty and very cheesy. Everything will balance out in the oven once we mix in the cauliflower. Adjust this as necessary. Mine's good, so I'm going to call it. I get the oven on to preheat, 200 degrees C, 400 degrees F, convection, or 220, 430 for conventional. And while that does its thing, I'll grab a good sized oven-proof dish and add the cauliflower. It should be large enough for the cauliflower to spread out in a single layer. Next, I'll just pour the sauce over the cauliflower, and then using a metal spoon so as not to break things up, I'll give it a toss to ensure all the cauliflower is nicely coated in that sauce. Finally, I'll grate on a little fresh parmesan. This is optional, but very good. Recommended. And I'll follow that with a little more grated cheddar for a brown top. You don't need much here, just to scatter in maybe 50 to 100 grams of the cheddar. To finish, I'll add a generous amount of freshly ground black pepper, and then I'll move this over to a baking tray for easy handling and load it onto my preheated oven on the middle shelf. This will only need 20 to 25 minutes, so I'll set a timer for 20 and I'll check from there. 20 minutes later and this looks perfect. There's some nice browning on the cauliflower and the sauce is bubbling well. The cauliflower should be tender but still with some bite. The last thing you want is mushy cauliflower. I'll just let this sit and cool slightly for a few minutes before plating it and serving it, making sure to get plenty of the sauce as well. This is a perfect accompaniment to any Sunday roast where it brings a rich, velvety comfort that totally ties the plate together. I really hope you give this a try soon. Let me know down in the comments what you think. Thanks for watching, folks, and keep on cooking.